immigration to Canada began early in the 19th century. Greeks from the islands and from the poorer villages of the provinces of Arcadia and Laconia settled in Montreal as early as 1843. However, in 1871, only 39 persons of Greek origin were known to be living in Canada. Greek immigration was sporadic prior to 1900, but increased considerably in the early 20th century as a result of poverty, wars, and political upheavals in Greece. With the growth of Greek immigration after 1905, Greek settlements in Canada began to show signs of ethnic community formation. Cultural and patriotic associations were established first to help the immigrants adjust to the new society, to combat prejudice and discrimination, and to preserve the Greek language and culture. Samuel Drossus is an example of a young man who left his native Greece to pursue a better life in the United States and Canada. Samuel Asimakis E. Drossus was born on March 28, 1890, in Ladorikion, Doridos, Greece, where his father was a sheep shepherd. He was one of 4 boys and 2 sisters. In 1910, Samuel and his brother George left Greece, arriving in New York, to pursue a better life. In 1912, Samuel left New York to return to Greece to fight in the Balkan War. His brother George stayed in the United States, leaving New York for Wenatchee and Everett, Washington, to work on the Stevens Pass for the Great Northern Railroad. Samuel Drossus returned to North America in 1914, but this time to Canada. His brother Jim also came with him. Only one brother, Christopher, and 2 sisters remained in Greece. Samuel began working for the Canadian Pacific Railway from 1914 to 1918 and became a section foreman at Myra Canyon in Kelowna. After this work, in 1918, Samuel and his brother George decided to move to Penticton. Canada had introduced the Naturalization Act of 1914 and then again in 1920, where a person who does not receive citizenship through birth or parental descent could become a permanent resident of Canada and then after 3 years of residency in a 4-year period apply for citizenship. In 1920, Samuel applied for his naturalization certificate, listing his profession to be a confectionery merchant. It was very common for the early Greek residents of Canada to become entrepreneurs in the restaurant, hotel, and merchandising business. They tended to migrate to larger urban centers. This is attributed to the fact that many Greek immigrants came from poor, rural, agricultural backgrounds and were seeking a better and different life. In 1922, Samuel and George built and opened the Okanagan Candy Kitchen and Cafe in the 200 block of Main Street, Penticton. This was a restaurant and confectionery where candy and ice cream were made right on the premises. The Candy Kitchen was a successful business, and the Drossus brothers were establishing themselves as not only entrepreneurs, but as active members of the community. In 1933, with Canada still suffering from the Depression, and Penticton being a divisional point on the KVR, there were a fair share of men seeking work, food, and shelter. An arrangement was made between the local parish and George and Samuel Drossus that they would feed the men who were sent in with a note from the rector Beams at their cafe. The brothers were then to submit the bills to the rector. It is noted that the arrangement worked out very well, especially because the 2 big-hearted Drossus brothers only charged half the menu price. Samuel married Asimas Karadimos, who was born in Greece on November 14, 1900. They had 3 sons, Nick, Samuel, and George. In 1936, Sam and George purchased the 200 block of Main Street, which became known as the Drossus Block. A year later, in 1938, George and Samuel took an interest in the Three Gables Hotel, which was in the 300 block of Main Street. Construction of this hotel had begun in 1933, and the hotel had officially opened in 1935. By 1943, the Drosses brothers became the full proprietors of the Three Gable Hotel, which stayed in the family until 1996 when they sold it. In February of 2000, the hotel burnt down, and then a piece of Penticton history was lost. In 1972, Samuel Drosses passed away, having been a resident of Penticton for 54 years. His wife, Esimo, died in 1988. They had 3 sons and 10 grandchildren. Other monuments of the family were that in 1974, Crystal Drosses, wife of Samuel Jr., won a national trophy as the best markswoman in Canada. In 1985, Nick Drossos became the 20th county court judge in history of Yale County and the first judge ever in BC to be appointed from the Greek community. Samuel Drossos of Greece and then Canada played a role in the development of Canada from colony to country, working on the CPR and KVR, and then as a prominent merchant hotelier. He was one